Hey, what is up guys? Calum or Calum's Fish Tanks, and in today's video we're going to be talking about how to do proper maintenance on a planted tank. One question I see so often from new aquarists is how do you gravel vac a heavily planted tank? They see the carpet and if you try to gravel vac that, you're going to rip it all up. So they wonder, how do you do a proper water change? How do you get all that gunk out of your substrate so you don't get algae and stuff? So that's what we're going to be talking about today, as well as a bunch of little tips and things I use when I do my water changes. So first up, I'm going to talk about the two main tools I use. These are pretty simple. The first one is a little razor blade. A lot of people freak out about these and say you're gonna scratch the glass, but as long as you're careful and slow with it, it won't happen. And these are great for removing hard to get algae, things like green spot algae. They're perfect for removing that. And then the other tool I use is this little wire brush. It's got a bunch of dog hair in it, but I just basically use this for any kinds of string algae. I'll ring it around that, kind of like spaghetti, and then pull it out. This is a super useful tool. Definitely recommend one of these. Now, most of my tanks are pretty small, so all I use for doing water changes is a piece of tubing. I think I have like 6 different sizes, maybe 5 different sizes of tubing that I use for water changing. For these, I go to Home Depot and pick them up. Here is one I use that's really small. This I use for the UNS 5S above. And then I've got one, hit my camera there, that's a little bit bigger, that I use for my 24 gallon. The bigger the hole on the tube, the faster it'll drain your tank. You don't want something too big if it's a small tank, because then you'll end up sucking up gravel. Now, a lot of people worry about fertilizers. Me personally, I just use all-in-ones. I find they work pretty well, and people worry too much about their ferts, and some people constantly switch them up. And I don't think that's the right things to do things. I think keeping a healthy planted tank is about 50% your equipment, 25% the plants you choose, and then the other 25% the maintenance you do. And now let's get to talking about some things you may be doing wrong in terms of your maintenance that aren't as, obvious. So the first thing I want to talk about, one of the big causes of algae is dying plants. Whether that's just some leaves that have fallen off and floating around the tank, or if the bottoms of your stems are dying. These are all big sources of ammonia and can lead to really bad algae blooms. What I recommend doing is going in after every water change and picking off any floating leaves at the top of your water, or if your plant's bottoms are dying, it may be time to trim them and then replant the tops to get rid of those dying bottoms. Now, sometimes it's pretty hard to keep up with those plant trimmings that float up to the top, so I recommend looking into a skimmer. On this tank I'm using the Eheim Skim 350 and I really enjoy it. It's really useful to invest in one of these, especially if you have some smaller carpeting plants like Monte Carlo, dwarf hairgrass, dwarf baby tears, or Pogostemon erectus makes a big mess. This little skimmer here I keep mainly in this 9.5 gallon, but whenever I trim my plants I will rotate that into the tanks to get rid of all the extra trimmings. So now let's go back to that initial question at the start. How do you gravel vac a tank with a dense carpet? And for that we have the turkey baster technique. This I use on my tanks about every 2 or 3 weeks to go in and get rid of any detritus that's in my substrate. I'll turkey baste over the soil with the hose over it. I found it makes a big difference to be siphoning while you're doing this, because if you don't, collecting all that stuff once it's floated up in the water is really hard to do, so you want to have the siphon right there. This technique has been really helpful for me when dealing with, really annoying algae like blackbeard algae or staghorn, or even green dust algae that can be caused by high nitrates or lots of organic waste. Earlier I mentioned trimming and replanting your dying stems, and when you do this you will also want to use this turkey baster technique. You can see here I'm trimming off the tops and then removing as much of the bottoms of the stems as I can to get rid of all that dying plant matter while having the siphon going near this. This will ensure I'm picking up any of the detritus that I'm stirring up so it doesn't end up in my water column or stuck in between plants leading to algae. Most of it will go to the filter, but the stuff left behind can cause pretty big problems. Now, if you've never done this turkey baster technique and your tank has been set up for quite a while, you're gonna make a pretty big mess, and you're gonna want to clean your filter after. I know most of you watching this video should probably clean your filter. You've probably been putting it off for a long time like me, but cleaning your filter will make a big difference, especially if you're dealing like those painful algae like BBA and others. But yeah guys, that pretty much wraps up all I wanted to talk about. A couple little maintenance tips that not enough people talk about that are super helpful for keeping algae low. But anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. This was Calum's Fish Tanks. Peace.